Shabbat Shalom, everybody. At this hour, I'm on a Zoom at a different service attending a simcha. So I wish you a Shabbat Shalom. I look forward to seeing many of you this evening at 5:15 for Mariv and Havdalah. On Wednesday evening, after the storming of the Capitol, I offered some remarks on YouTube, which made available to the congregation some reflection on that day's events. And I promise to reflect with you further this morning on that five-alarm fire we witnessed against in our democracy. So this week we begin the second book of the Torah, the book of Exodus, Sh'mot, in the first chapter of which Pharaoh enslaves our people, in the second chapter of which, against all odds, against Pharaoh's decree, Moshe survives. He is tossed in the river, but placed there, actually, and survives. He has a dual identity. He is nursed and until weaning by his mother, and those years were apparently formative, left a permanent impression on him, a permanent identity as a Hebrew, as one of us. And then he was adopted and raised in the palace by Pharaoh's daughter, a prince of Egypt. And later in chapter 2, he goes out. Uh, the Torah says, "Lirot et echav," to see his brethren. And the Torah is wonderfully ambiguous. Who are his brethren? Are they the Hebrews, the people into which he was born, or the Egyptians, the people he was raised to be a part of, in all the privilege of royalty? And we learn quickly that he identifies, in fact, with us, with the Hebrews. And we know that because when he sees an Egyptian taskmaster abusing one of us, abusing even by the standards of slavery, he is enraged and attacks the Egyptian, kills him, buries him in a shallow grave. The next day, he tries to intervene between two Hebrews, two Israelites who are fighting, and they reject his leadership. They want no part of it. Mind your own business, they tell him, and they let him know that they saw what he did the day before. And not only we learn do they know, but the word of his killing of an Egyptian has reached the palace, reached Pharaoh himself, and Pharaoh intends to kill Moses. Moses is a marked man, and he, in short order, in just the sparest narrative, he flees for his life. He runs from Egypt, and he lands in Midian, a neighboring land, and he finds himself a wife. The daughter of a Midianite priest, no less. He marries her, and he becomes a mere shepherd in Yitro's flock. When we meet him in chapter 3, Moses has the flock out to pasture. It says Achar Hamidbar, in the farthest reaches of the wilderness. He is nowhere. He is at the edge of nowhere as a mere shepherd of his father-in-law's flock. It's easy to imagine that Moses imagines that he has left his entire former life behind. The identification with the Hebrews, the pain of witnessing their suffering, the desire to intervene, the frustration of being rejected as he tries to help, the impossibility of trying, the seeming impossibility of making a difference against the vast, brutal power of Egypt. He's left it all behind. Shepherding he can do. And then he sees this shrub burning. Sne bo'er ba'esh, sne bo'er ba'esh, there's a shrub burning, v'hasne einenu ukal. But it was not consumed. It didn't burn up. The fire in this dry desert shrub did not burn itself out. And Moses is amazed by what he sees, and he says, Asura na ve'ereh, let me turn aside and go look at this very strange phenomenon. Madua loiv ar hasne. Why won't this fire burn itself out? And then when God is satisfied that Moshe is curious about this fire, that Moses cares about this fire, then God calls out to him, Moshe, Moshe. Moshe says, Hineni. And then, boom, God identifies himself as the God of his father and specifies Elohei Abraham, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And God explains that God, has heard the cries of his people, has seen their suffering, and commissions Moshe to lead them out of slavery. Now, Moshe imagined that he had left it all behind, but he was drawn to this fire. He was drawn to this fire, and so we have to ask ourselves, what is this fire? So I'm going to say that this fire that burns but does not burn itself out is the fire of injustice, is the fire of slavery, is the fire of idolatry, is the fire of brutal power, is the fire of ignorance, is the fire of mistrust, is the fire of a failed society where Israelite fights against Israelite and rejects their own liberation. These are the fires that still burn and do not burn themselves out. Moshe thought he was going to investigate a burning shrub, kind of like Ranger Rick, but Moshe himself didn't even understand what was going on, that in fact he was drawn to this fire, the fire of injustice, as I've said. And when God sees that Moshe cares about the fire, that's when God knows that he's got his man, and that's when God calls out to Moshe, summons him to be the liberator. And this is the teaching I want to bring on this Shabbos, following Wednesday's storming of the Capitol, because we discovered to our horror, even though we had this election and we elected a good man, a man of integrity, a man of vision. Not everyone listening to me today necessarily voted for him, but I believe that our country has elected a man of integrity, of honesty, of vision, of public service, a commitment to public service. And we may have imagined in recent decades that the fire of racism and the fire of misogyny and the fire of economic inequality and the fire of ignorance and the fire of poor education and the fire of environmental injustice and so on and so on and so on. We may have imagined that we have solved some of these, but of course, no, we haven't. These fires of injustice still burn. And we saw it in the most painful way, in the ugliest, most brutal way on Wednesday. On Wednesday, when men with Confederate flags marched through the halls of the Capitol, when a man wearing an Auschwitz, a Camp Auschwitz T-shirt, sweatshirt, marched through the halls of our nation's capital. The fires still burn. But God wants to know that we, like Moshe, still care, that we feel compelled to investigate the fire. Why does it burn? Now, those who were involved at every level of Wednesday's events, they need accountability. They need to be prosecuted, absolutely. But then there's the day after. Then there's the day after when we need to continue to care and need to continue to strive to make this a more perfect union. God called to Moshe in the name of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and God calls to us as well. This is who we are as Jews. But similarly, our own our own country, our own constitution, the halls of the Capitol call out to us by the names of our founding fathers, of the founding ideals of the United States. And so this is who we need to be as Jews, and this is who we need to be as Americans, and this is who we need to be as American Jews. We need to continue to care. We need to turn aside and look. Madua lo yuvar hasneh. Why won't these fires burn out? And we need to become, as Moshe became, we need to become liberators too. We need to lend our best efforts to continue to try to beat back these fires and to make ours a more perfect union, to try to resolve these god awful these god awful divisions in our society, the deep mistrust, the collapse of truth, the disregard for democracy, and so on. We need to continue to work on this, and in this way, we need, like Moshe, to be liberators. And if, like Moshe, we say, uh, "Mi anochi ke'elecha paro," who am I? What can I do? How can I act against this? How can I be effective against this terrible power? Then we need to hear what God says to Moshe, Anochi ehyeh imach, I will be with you. And we need to know that God will be with us, that God will give us more strength than we know ourselves to have, that God will give us more capacity than we know ourselves to have, to be effective. And at a certain level, we know v'hasna'inenu ukal, that the fires of injustice, in all of its forms, the fires of slavery, of racism, the fires of idolatry, in a way, we know that these fires will never be extinguished, that they will never burn ourselves out. But at the same time, we know that Moshe was a liberator. Both are true. Both are true. We know that at the Pesach Seder, and we know it this week as we begin the story of the Exodus. And so we need to turn aside and look at the fire and care about the fire and understand that it's burning and that we care. And we know that when we turn aside and look, that God will see us and God will call out to us, and that God will give us strength to act as we know we must. Though it's hard, though it's dispiriting, uh, though the road is very long, we need to, because we have no choice. That's who we are as Jews, as Americans, and that's who we need to be. Shabbat Shalom. Chazan Stein has chosen a special melody for Oseh Shalom as an exit melody from this sermon and from these reflections. I wish you all well, and I look forward to seeing you soon.